Good morning, everybody. So, first session of the first day of the conference, and this particular presentation, this will be my first time presenting it. So, it's first. I wouldn't want it any other way. I'm going to share my screen with the title slide here, and we'll jump right in. So hopefully that shows up for everybody. And if you came into this session expecting a major gift development program workshop, then you are in the right place. If you're expecting something about stewardship, then you're in the wrong place. And hopefully everybody here is in the right place. My name is David Allen. I'm a fundraising consultant. So I have been raising money for about 30 years. And roughly divided into thirds. About a third of that time was with the Nature Conservancy. I worked in chapters in Oregon, in Texas, and then in Wisconsin, where I live now. About a third of that time was with an international conservation group called Sand County Foundation. It was based on the teachings and life of Aldo Leopold and his signature work. And about a third of that time has been consulting. My consulting practice is development for conservation, and it is all about helping nonprofit land conservation organizations raise money. So I worked with land trusts, I work with nature centers, and I work with river groups. You can get a copy of the slides of this presentation. Obviously, it's being recorded as well, but in a relatively boring way, I have posted a lot of words on a page, and the reason I did that is because in one of the challenges in a virtual environment versus a live environment is that it's really less presentation and a lot more content. So I've been told, I've gotten feedback that what they really want is they want the notes, and so I've framed this presentation to be sort of note heavy and images light. There are some images in there, and I've got some stories to tell and so on. So hopefully it won't be boring, and I'm not going to read them to you, obviously, but if you want to see the notes and the slides, you can go to developmentforconservation.com. There's a resources page under the About Us tab, and pull it down. You can even do that right now and then follow along. The agenda and the flow for today is I want to talk a little bit. I'm aware that most of the land trusts in Rhode Island and Massachusetts are all volunteer. I've got some words to say about that. In terms of being all volunteer and sort of how to adapt this. A lot of major gift work in the country is being done by staff members and by executive directors and directors of development specifically. But that doesn't mean that those roles can't be filled by volunteers and board members. And I think that major gift is an important component of a fundraising program. And so I want to talk about sort of why you would want to do this. I want to start from some really basic definitions, and you'll see why in a minute. I want to talk about where you find major gift prospects, and I want to take you through pretty quickly a step-by-step approach. And again, this is downloadable in the notes, but a step-by-step approach to building a major gift program. And then I want to just touch on some interesting opportunities, some twists and turns that might help you think about this in a little bit different way. Before I start, I want to note that if your land trust regularly reaches out to landowners, or you are talking to landowners about donating their land, and some of those conversations result in donations of land to your organization or easements to your organization, you already have a major gift program. You just don't think you do. These are a gift of land, a gift of an easement is a major gift. And all of the same steps, from the introduction to the cultivation, to the ongoing conversations, to the actual engagement, to the request, to the acknowledgement and thank you, all of that is a part of a major gift program. We just need to pick that up from the land business and move it over into the cash business, and then we will be in business. So why do this? A couple of big reasons. Um, First of all, in every single community, I would say bar none, there is money out there that you're not actually raising. Most organizations that feel like they can't raise big money or they can't raise more money than they're raising, the pretty much the most important factor, the most important barrier is an unwillingness to ask. It's not an unwillingness to give or even a lack of resources. I mean, when you think about it this way. If you have a smartphone, you have a $1,000 engagement with a phone company that a lot of which, not all, but a lot of which is entertainment related. And you have that engagement on an annual basis, on a renewable annual basis at $1,000 a year. $1,000 a year is not as much money as it used to be. We are terrified about raising money because of culture. We don't want to admit that we can't do it on our own. So we're unwilling to help. We're very reluctant, not unwilling, but very reluctant to ask people for help. The difference in the land business is that there's an underlying assumption in the land business that that the donor wants to protect their land. It's not like we're asking them to do something or we're selling something or we're doing, trying to convince them of something. It's that the starting premise is that they already want to protect their land. It's the same premise in major gifts, is that you are doing something that the donor wants to see done. And if we can change that paradigm from you helping us do something that we want to do to us helping you to something that you want to do, we will raise more money. There's more people who love you. There's more money than we're raising. And major gift development is a systematic approach to getting there. So the other piece of this is that relationships with donors, strong relationships with donors, is strongly correlated with success, with thriving instead of surviving. We saw this in 2009 and 2010. Many organizations failed. Why did they fail? They didn't have any relationships with their donors really at all. And we saw this even last year. There were many land trusts last year raised more money than they've ever raised before. And it's because they had really strong relationships with their donors. This strong relationship business, this building these relationships that result in major gifts is part of that strength that I'm talking about. So let's start sort of from the beginning. A gift is something that's given freely. It's not, they're not buying anything. They're not getting something in return. They're not getting a discount for multi-year memberships. They're not doing something in memory of someone else or in recognition of a birthday or a wedding. Those are gifts also, but they're not gifts to you. They're gifts to the bride and groom. So we need to keep in mind that a gift is something that is given without any kind of compensation back. And a major gift is major not because of the size of the gift, but because of how big of a decision it is for the donor. There might be a case where someone gives $1,000 and that is an enormous gift for them, regardless of how much money they make, regardless of what their net worth is. It's an enormous gift for them. That makes it a major gift. Another person might give $1,000 to sort of, oh yeah, sure, that's fine, and then pull $1,000 out of their pocket and give it to you. That's not a major gift. It's not a major decision for them. It's not about the dollar amount. It's about the decision, and it's differentiated from an annual gift, and a gift that really isn't I have to think about this. Oh, I have to consider this. Oh, it's got to be for a specific program or project. So in that sense, we don't have major donors. We have major gifts. We don't have, and the major gift donor. So the word major modifies the word gift and not donor. and it's differentiated from annual gift. So let's talk about annual gift. Annual gift is in support of the mission. It's almost always unrestricted. Annual gifts are renewable, where you go back every year at the same time every year and you ask them for an increase or another gift or renewal. Major gifts are for one specific program, project, or outcome. So you, in order to get another major gift from the same donor, it's not a renewal. You have to have another project. There is a correlation between the size of the gift and whether or not it's annual or major, but it's a little more nuanced than that. I would say that even for very wealthy people, they're not so comfortable giving gifts of, say, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 and more, even if they can afford it, without at least knowing a little bit more about exactly how it's going to be used. So they want to see it restricted. They want to see it go to a specific program, a specific land conservation project, a specific endowment, or so on. In that sense, there are sort of three different kinds of gifts that people make, and I'll show you these on a graph. There's sort of token gifts, gifts that don't take a lot of thought to make a decision, and then somewhere north of there, it's like, well, maybe I'm not going to make that decision without talking to my spouse. Then it changes from a token gift to maybe a more substantial gift for them. And then there's a range of substantial gifts for anybody, but it's not costing you anything really to give. It's just a bigger gift than you're normally used to. And at some level, you have to give something up in order to make a gift that you want to support. Then it crosses over into a sacrificial category. I'm going to do this instead of going out to dinner. I'm going to do this instead of going on vacation. I'm going to do this I'm going to give money to this organization instead of giving it to my kids. These are sacrifices, and you have to believe in something super strongly in order to be willing to make a sacrificial gift. As a general overlay, there are very few annual renewable gifts that fall into that sacrificial category. Most of them are, sort of in the token to mid-substantial range, whereas major giving sort of starts in that mid-substantial range and then goes all the way through into the sacrificial area. So again, just sort of recapping, major gift fundraising then is the anticipation and cultivation of major gift intent and realization. So you are engaging donors on a very personal level in something that they care about, and we know they care about it because we've heard them say it, and we're offering them an opportunity to make a big difference, and that's on a planned, intentional, systematic way. A major gift prospect then is somebody that you're working with with that sense. There's a basic concept here that I want to just cover very quickly, because there's a couple of them actually that I want to make sure that everybody sort of has the same idea about. And that is that the first one is we raise money from people who already give us money. What this means is major gift fundraising is not about finding the rich people in town and going to ask them. It's about finding the people who already support you and show that support through their current giving and saying, oh, how can we raise the bar for this person? How can we engage this person with something that they really care about and want to make a big difference on? So if you have a wealthy person in your community and you want to raise money from them in a major gift way, the first thing you have to do with that person is to engage them in giving you money, period. And that might be a very small amount, but it's a first gift, and that first gift means everything. The second sort of basic concept here is that the most accurate predictor is how recently they've given. So people who gave you money 20 years ago are not real prospects. It's just like, sorry, their names on a page, their names in your database, they're not real prospects until they've given money recently. And in the same way, someone who's given you money 3 months ago is a better prospect than somebody who gave you money 3 years ago. So given all those premises, where do you find major gift prospects? Well, clue, you already know them. These are people who are giving you money now. There is a there's a sort of a 1B or a 2 second place to go looking for major gifts, and that is if you close on a property or on an easement, and the landowner who made the decision to protect their land has a brief period of time when they have an opportunity to invite people in their immediate neighborhood to come in and hear about their decision. This can result in people making first gifts to the organization, but because it's related to a project, it might be more than you think, and it might be a jump start to a major gift program. But the bigger one is all the people who currently give you money now. Let's be a little more specific. People that you know. In an ideal situation, you would know every single person in the database. You would have a relationship. You would be able to to see somebody down the aisle in a grocery store and say, and know them and know, how much they gave last year. And you would know what kinds of projects they might be interested in. You would have a relationship with that particular person. We can't do that for everybody. It's just like there's too many people, right? So we've got to be thoughtful and intentional and specific about the people that we're beginning to work with. It's also true, by the way, that not everybody wants that kind of relationship with you or even with the organization. I've got more than one person in my background who said, or words to this effect, hey, look, I know why you're here. I respect what you're doing. I really support what your organization is working on, but I don't want to be cultivated for a larger gift that I'm giving now. I'll give you in this particular case that I'm thinking of. He said, I'll give you $5,000 a year for the rest of my life, but I'm not going to give you $250,000 for a project. And I was like, okay, thank you very much. We will take you off the major gift cultivation list. There's another group, people who are beginning to signal that they have both capacity and interest. What does this mean? This means that somebody maybe who's been giving $35 or $50 or $100 for a while, all of a sudden begins to give you $250 and $500 and maybe $1,000. That's a signal that their interest, that your status in their philanthropic plans is growing. Might be growing because you're getting to know them better. It might be growing because they've come into a different level of income. It might be growing for a number of other reasons. Maybe they're I've seen people's giving grow because they have a son or a daughter who is working now for a land trust and they have a new appreciation for what land trusts do. There's lots of reasons. And when people start giving at about the $250 level, it's time to at least check them out and see, hey, is this somebody that we can work with on a major gift level? And then finally, people who give to you, this is a premise, they're already giving to you, and they're known to give major gifts to other organizations. So how would you know this? Because their name is on the wall at the YMCA, because their name is on the wall at the library. I've gone to places like that and taken my cell phone out and taken pictures and start to comb through the people on the wall against our membership list. I want to know who's making major gifts in the community, who's also giving money to us. These might be people that you know, might be people that you don't know. But if they're already giving you money and they are known to give major gifts to other organizations, then you have a leg up in terms of being able to start working with them. So this gets to sort of a core question here, and that is, how many people can you possibly do this with? And my answer to that is, I don't care where you start somewhere. If you need to start with 5 people, start with 5 people. If you need to start with with, if you've got 10 people on the board, can each person take 2 or 3? That would give you, that would give you 20 or 30 people. So get a number that makes sense for you and your organization, but start somewhere. It doesn't matter how many people you start with. Just as reference points, a full-time major gift officer, someone who is on staff at like a small college, and this is all they do. All they do is major gift fundraising, and they have research support, they have administrative support. They're fully supported. All they have to do is go out and build relationships with donors. Their portfolio, if you will, is in the neighborhood of 120 to 150 people. An executive director or a director of development, where this is not their only job, which is true for, I would say, the great majority of land trusts in the country, who are not all volunteer. If they have any staff at all, they've got an executive director, probably 30 or 40, but that's 30 or 40 that they're working with alone. And if they start to work effectively through board members, where we take a look at who the board members know, then we can probably double that. So instead of 30 to 40, we're talking 60 to 80. But the effort has to be intentional. It has to be sustained, and somebody's got to lead. So if you are an organization that doesn't have any staff, I'm just gonna promote the idea that you have to get staff, even if they're not paid. So the organization of the major gift program for your organization, the building of it, needs to fall on one person's shoulders. Even if that person is not a paid staff person, it's still a staff role. It's not a board role, it's a staff role. But somebody's got to support this. If it's not led, if it's not supported, then it won't happen. It'll fall on its face. And there's lots of examples of sort of good faith efforts that fall, the good faith efforts that fail, good faith efforts, and so on. But because it's not the discipline of it hasn't come to bear, because nobody shouldered that responsibility. Even if you're all volunteer, and God bless you if you are, it's just phenomenal. I'll get to that at the end. But even if you're all volunteer, if there isn't somebody who is holding everybody else accountable, there isn't somebody who is fully supporting this effort, then it's not going to happen. Let me give you a sort of a story reference here. This is this comes from Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the things that he said was, there's a prophet and some acolytes, and the prophet brings out a bucket and starts to put in some rocks into the bottom of the bucket. And he says to his acolytes, he says, tell me when you think the bucket is full. And he keeps going until the rocks have gotten up to the top of the bucket, and the acolytes say, oh, the bucket's full. And he pulls out a sack of stones, and he starts to place in stones in amongst the rocks. And the light bulb goes on the acolytes and say, oh, now I know. And so then when that is leveled off, then the acolytes say, oh, the bucket is full. And he pulls out sand, the same story happens. And he pulls out water, and it's amazing how much water goes in the bucket, even after the stones and the rocks and the sand are in. And when it's finally all the way full, all the way to the top, he turns to the acolytes and he says, so what have you learned from this metaphor? And the acolytes think a minute and they say, well, no matter how full the bucket looks, you can always get more in it. And he said, that's not the lesson. The lesson is, if you want to get the big rocks in the bucket, you've got to put them in first. So the pitch that I'd like to make to you today, that I'd like you to walk away from this session, is, if you want major gift fundraising to happen, you've got to think about it as a big rock, and you've got to put it in the bowl first. Put it in your bucket first. Make it happen. If you're on staff, make it happen at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. If you're on the board, make it happen. Put the major gift fundraising at the very top of your agenda for every board meeting. If you have 12 board meetings a year, have the first one in January completely devoted to major gift fundraising. That's the only agenda item. And have another one maybe in August or September only devoted to fundraising, because that's the only way this is going to happen. If we don't make it a priority, it's hard. Major gift fundraising is emotionally difficult. And if it doesn't, if you're not, if this isn't front and center for you, it won't happen. So let's make an assumption here that you want it to happen. All right, so I figured out who I want to start working with. I figured out how I want to get started. What do I do? Here's a very quick rundown of what you're going to do. Step one, start in the fall. In fact, if you're hiring staff, I always recommend people hire staff in the fall. Why? Because the donor calendar is going to be January to December, regardless of your fiscal year. And the opportunity that pre-exists the person coming in, that most people will make fall gifts. And this is the time that you're going to be able to contact most of your donors, most of the people who already give you money. Most of those people, you're going to be able to contact them and say thank you. This is just a perfect opportunity to jump in the door and say, hey, I wanted to introduce myself. I want to thank you so much for making the gift that you just made. This happens in the fall. If you think you can handle 10 people, then start with 30. Make at least 30 calls. And out of those 30 people, choose the 10 people that you feel like you can work with. Whatever the number, if there was a major gift officer and that's all they were going to do for you is come in and just do major gift fundraising, I might give that person 400 or 500 people to call in the fall. And that's all they're going to do, September to January. That's all you're going to do is call people to say thank you, introduce themselves and call to say thank you, with the idea that after those calls, they choose their own 150 that they're going to be able to work with. Whatever the number is that you want to end up with, multiply by 3 and make that much effort. Second, plan for each person, plan the next ask. If they gave money in October, then maybe the next ask is going to be in April, or the next ask is going to be in the next October. When is the next ask going to be? It'll be different for every organization. It may be different for every donor. But whatever that is, you need to know what that ask is going to be. It's probably going to be a renewal. And you need to know how much you're going to ask for. Maybe they gave $50 and you're going to ask them for 100. Maybe they gave 10,000 and you're going to ask them for 12,000. Maybe they gave 10,000, you're going to ask them for 10,000 again. Whatever the number is, you need to have that already in mind before you start the year's worth of cultivation. Step 3, plan where and when and how and who is actually going to do the asking, right? This person is also going to think about when they're going to ask and how much they're going to ask for a major gift. The major gift may not happen in the same time. It may happen 2 years from now or 3 years from now. Same thing, think about a land donation. This is the mental image here. So you don't walk into the door and say, hi, my name is David Allen. I'm from the XYZ Land Trust. I want you to donate your land. Please say yes or no. And it's like an expect success. It isn't going to happen that way. So with major gifts, you are working with the annual gift system. You're working with their annual renewal, but you're already beginning to think about, okay, what would a major gift look like for this person, and what kind of project would be the right project for them, and how can we put together a program to where they might be interested in doing that. Project what they're going to be asked to do. Step 4, answer this question. Why are they going to say yes? We are really, really good. I mean, human beings, to being who we are, we're really, really good at imagining them saying no. We are not particularly good at believing they're So as a discipline, sit down in pairs. If it helps you to think through this with somebody else, then absolutely do that. Why is this person going to say yes? Do they believe in the organization? Do they like wetlands? Do they live right next to a really great property? Do they like trails? We make assumptions to begin with, and then we go check them out. So project. Imagine dogs. They must walk dogs somewhere. Let's figure out, why they might be interested in saying yes because of their dogs, or their kids, or their elderly parents, or they've been, or whatever. It's what are the reasons that this person is going to say yes? Might be geography. It might be landscape type. Might be shoreline. It might be wetlands. It might be forest. It might be anything. But imagine why that person is going to say yes to you. Now, keep in mind when you're thinking about why people say yes. Simon Sinek says this in a TED talk. People don't buy what you do. People don't buy how you're going to do it. They buy why you're going to do it. So typically we start with what we're doing. Oh, we're going to protect this piece of property. It's so many acres. We're going to do it through a conservation easement. That's how. And then we sort of fumble with the why. But if we'll start, this is according to Simon Sinek, if we start with why, what we believe in, what our beliefs are, then we'll connect with that part of them that believes what we believe. Let me put this a little bit different way. In order for donors to make a yes decision for you, they need to know what you're going to do. They need to know what the outcome is going to be. They need to know what the result is. They need to know how you're going to do it. They need to know what the opportunities are. They need to know what the programs are. They need to know what the menu is. But they also need to know why. What do you believe? We believe that children need to be outside. We believe that environmental education is an important part of education. We believe that taking a walk is good for your health. We believe that protected spaces produce, among other things, clean air and clean water, or help produce. We believe that if we can protect enough of this kind of property, that our landscape will be more resilient to climate changes. What do you believe? And when you talk about and get real clear about what you believe, you'll connect with people who believe the same thing. And when you're connected at a belief level, at an emotional level, then major gift fundraising becomes a lot easier. They also need to know, by the way, that you're capable. They need to know that you're responsible, that you're trustworthy. How do you gauge that? These are the people who are going to be on your board. This is whether or not your 990 is available and what it looks like. This is what your annual report. This is why people do annual reports, is to sort of report back to the donors. This is what we're doing, so that people believe that you're capable also. Step 5, plan their active and cultivation and engagement. I actually like the word engagement more than cultivation, but I put them both in here. I would say 3 or 4 engagements, 3 or 4 steps for every ask. What do I mean by that? Let's look. What does an engagement opportunity look like? Communications. If something just happened and you send an email to somebody that says, hey, this just happened. Hey, we just hired somebody. Hey, we just brought in somebody on the board. Hey, we just closed on this piece of property. Hey, we've got this wonderful thing happening, nesting pair of bald eagles, blah, blah, whatever the news is. If that news comes from you, specifically you as a person, instead of the organization, then it becomes personal. That's engagement. How do you know that somebody is engaged by your communications versus you just spewing it out there? You know because they answer. So if I send an email out, it's just an email. It's not engagement. If they respond to my email, it's engagement. If I send an invitation to somebody to an event and they say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't come to your event, that's engagement. If they just ignore it, if I don't hear anything, it doesn't have the same engagement value. So what you're going to do in this step is you're going to plan the individual engagement for each one of these donors. That's why if you need to start with 5, then start with 5. 5 people at 4 engagement touches every year is 20 touches. That's a lot. I understand that. But this is where building relationships really matters. And to a certain extent, we do this already. We just don't codify it. We greet people, we invite people personally, we take people out on tours, we have lunch and coffee with people, we talk to people on the phone, we correspond in email, we have these relationships. This is Major Gift fundraising is just about codifying that, making it intentional instead of just happenstance. The lost piece of this is personal introductions. So if somebody joins your board and you have an opportunity to introduce that new board member to somebody who's a major gift prospect or a significant donor to the organization, then take advantage of that opportunity. A new staff person, same thing. So be the person that is introducing donors to board members and board members to donors. Those are all engaged. There's lots more, but those are sort of broad brush engagement opportunities. What's the common denominator of all of these? The word personal. Personal communications, personal invitations, personal tours, personal lunch, coffee, personal interactions, personal introductions. The difference between high-tech fundraising, email, crowdfunding, social media, even direct mail, even renewal and appeal mail and that kind of thing. Between that kind of fundraising and major gift fundraising is the word personal. All of that other stuff is institutional. It doesn't come from you specifically, it comes from the institution. It's driven by the institution. Social media crosses the line a couple times, but the bottom line is most people understand it's being kicked out by the organization, by the institution. Step by step. Step 6, implement your engagement plan. So part of step 5 was to put all these things on a calendar. In April, we're going to have this event. In June or July, we're going to get in canoes and we're going to canoe over here. And in September, we're going to have this other thing. And in November, we're going to ask them for money. So that's all about their engagement plan. You want to put those touches, those moves, those events, those activities out on a calendar so that at any given time, you're able to look at, oh, here's a month of May. This is what we're supposed to do in May. Implement. Step 7, determine after the first year, not after the first engagement opportunity, but after the first year, whether the potential with this person is real or not. Is this a person that is warming to the relationship, or is this person who is, as a friend of mine used to say, who is crossing the street when they see you coming? Is this real? Because for 2 out of 3, it won't be. It's not going to be somebody that is willing and ready to be engaged at this kind of level. Will this result in a major gift? And if the answer is yes, then start off the next year and do the whole thing. What's the shorthand for that? Yeah. Rinse and repeat. So those are the 8 steps. And again, they're on the PDF of the slides and you can download it off the website. How do you know if it's working? What do we know about major gift fundraising that tells you that it's working? It's a huge deal if they call you. Look, if you're building a relationship with someone and it's completely one-sided and they're warm and they're fine and they answer the phone when you call and everything else, that's great. But the moment that they call you, hey, I heard this, or hey, there's this property over here that you should take a look at, or hey, blah, blah, whatever the case may be, if they call you, that's huge. You know that this is working when they call you. Their interest is advancing. maybe you're talking to them 2 or 3 times a year now, and 3 years from now, you're talking to them 8 or 9 times a year. That's advancing. That's deepening. That's changing. Maybe instead of just talking about one thing every time, you're talking about you're referencing things that happened 3 months ago, or 6 months ago, or 6 years ago. The other big factor for a metric is if you're working with someone at this level and they don't renew their membership, they don't respond to the appeal that year, that's not a good sign. So one of the big metrics is 100% gift renewal. I'm one of the things I'm working on in metrics as a consultant is that I track the 5-year value of brand new members. In other words, what does the average person give to the organization within the first 5 years of their association, of their membership, of their donorship with the organization? The median number on the 30 or so organizations that I've looked at is right around $800. The common denominator, there's a couple of them, but the common denominator of organizations getting substantially less than $800, down all the way to $180, $200 within 5 years, is that there's no major gift program. There's no sense that this is a personal relationship at any level. And those are the organizations that are having real struggles, that had real struggles in 2020. Organizations that were raising more than $800 within the first 5 years of their members' relationship with them, and it goes all the way up to 6,000. I mean, where the average value of a new member is $6,000 in 5 years. All those organizations had strong relationships with their donors. They had strong relationships at a major gift level with their donors, and all those donors, as a result of that, were giving every year. So it makes a huge difference if somebody gives you in 5 years, if they make 5 gifts versus if they only make 1 gift and then leave. So I'm gonna stop there, and I'm gonna just talk about 3 opportunities that are right here, right now, that you can think about once you have thought about a major gift development program. Once you've thought about working with donors in this way, then I think there's some things that you can think about that will help you raise more money with a major gift program. One of them is appreciated assets. Most people, when they think about appreciated assets, think about stock, and it's appropriate. That's exactly right. They should be thinking about stock. Somebody who bought, the market's gone crazy, right? And many of these people bought stock 20 and 30 years ago. If they were to sell it today, their capital gain would be enormous. But they can give you stock instead of cash, and they don't pay the capital gain tax, and they do get the full fair market value of the stock on the day that it's given as a tax deduction. That's significant in 2020 and 2021. This is the second year of 2, because the IRS is allowing wealthy individuals to give 100% of their adjusted gross income and take it as a tax deduction. So there's some ways to think about stock gifts and cash gifts above which they would normally be able to give. And I'm going to codify all this with, I'm not an attorney. I'm not providing tax advice. I'm not going to pretend to be, but it's something to check out. This might be a great year to give stock. There's also an organization called Real Estate Fund that's based out of New Mexico. It exists to speculate in the real estate market for charity, and they're a 501c3 themselves. So what will happen at the Nature Conservancy, we call them trade lands. These are lands that are donated but don't have conservation value. So the purpose of the donation of the land is that the Nature Conservancy would sell the land and use the proceeds to buy land that does have conservation value. Real Estate Fund is an organization that's set up to do that. So they receive the gift of land, and then they sell it and they donate the money back to the organization that the land donor designates. And that could easily be a land trust, or it could be more than one organization. The beauty of the real estate fund from a land trust standpoint is there's two pieces. One of them is that we're not engaged in having to market the property. So we're completely taken out of that responsibility. And the second is that they're willing to speculate. So they're willing to buy land. Say the land was $500,000, they're willing to buy land at 200,000, sell it, and then donate the margin, the $300,000 realization back to the charity. Whereas a land trust probably wouldn't even touch a deal like that. They're not going to buy land for the purpose of reselling it. So there's some really interesting opportunities right now with appreciated assets, and there are people who are beginning to look at liquidating some of these assets. Second opportunity that just to be on a major gift level is that we're in the land trust community. We are challenged by not knowing how much money we need to raise until the land deal comes along and gives us only 6 weeks to raise the money. So our default has been to raise money sort of for an opportunity fund, or for a treasure chest, or for whatever you want to call it, so that to build up a cash reserve, so that when a deal did come along, we could just simply pay for it and then replace the money in the cash reserve. This is difficult. I mean, it just is. It's challenging because donors don't know exactly what they're giving to. And as I described a lot earlier, after about $25,000, the donors really want to know exactly how their money is going to be used. So one option is a conditional pledge, a multi-year conditional pledge. So in other words, someone says, yes, I'm really interested in forest land that connects mountain biking trails. And if you find a project like that, I'd be interested in helping. So this could become a pledge. And under these certain conditions. If these conditions are met, then I'm good. You can come to me for $200,000, and I'll give you $200,000, or I'll give you $50,000 a year toward that purchase for 4 years for $200,000. That's a conditional pledge. And once the conditions are met, it gives you permission to go to that person and say, would you now contribute? As a capital goal, as a major gift, as a major gift program goal, you might have conversations with 6 or 8 or 10 of these people, and build up a sort of a conditional cash reserve in that way instead. And then last, as an opportunity, I just want to mention plan giving. There are lots of different kind of plan gifts, annuities and trusts and life insurance and all kinds of stuff. But the great majority of plan gifts are estate gifts. They come in as bequests, and oftentimes they're surprises. Having said that, there's an awful lot of wealth that's going to be transferred in the next 20 years, in the next generation, from the boomers to the Gen Xers and the millennials. To talk to especially baby boomers, and to talk to them about leaving part of their estate to a legacy campaign or a legacy gift to the local land trust is completely allowed. You should be strongly encouraged to do this kind of work. And one way to do it is to create a legacy match campaign. This is where a donor might give you a chunk of money this year. We'll call it $10,000. They gave you $10,000 that you can spend this year, but the condition is, for every person who lets you know that your land trust has been left in their will, then $500 is released from the match. So in order to get the entire $10,000, 20 different people would have to let you know that you're in their will. Why is this important? Because you can say thank you while they're still around, while they're still alive. And people who have made their bequests public are much less likely to change their mind later. So having the ability to thank them, having the ability to cultivate their continued interest, and having the security of knowing that they're less likely to change their mind is a great reason to actually have a legacy match campaign. There are lots of other ideas. I could talk to you all afternoon, all morning and afternoon. However, in the interest of time and making sure that we have time for questions, I want to move to the questions portion. And I'll stop sharing my screen here and see if Eric, how are we doing on questions?
We're doing good. We have several. Let's see. So I will draw attention to Colleen just posted in the chat the SurveyMonkey survey for this. We really encourage you to fill out the survey as soon as possible, especially during the intermittent time between this and the plenary session coming up. We really value your feedback, and it's really helpful for us, especially in this new virtual conference setting. But yeah, so we do have a couple of questions. I see one came in the chat recently, but I will start with them. The first one for David. So this comes from Cassie. I hear that you on starting in the fall, but it is spring right now. So do you cultivate by invitations to events? And she also notes that this is a fabulous presentation.
Well, thank you for the fabulous presentation part. Let's dwell on that one for a little bit. You can start anytime. I'm thinking that it may take a little bit of time to put your materials together, to put opportunities together, to put your database together, to draw your list. I like to have the entire, when I'm looking for this, when I'm starting to work with different organizations, I like to put the entire list of people in front of my board and say, hey, who do you know? Let's start with people that you know. Who do you know, and who should we get to know, and how do we prioritize that way? That might take you between now and the end of the summer. So you'd be effectively starting in the fall anyway. But I'm with you, Cassie. I think that there's no time like the present. I'm reminded of the adage that the best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. So let's start planting oak trees, and let's start with wherever we can start with whatever we can start with.
Excellent, thank you for that. The next question comes from Lucy. Do you have thoughts on purchasing screened demographic data to identify potential conservation donors?
Sort of. I've spent the majority of my career, I don't know what kind of organization that you are representing, so I'm going to have to answer this in sort of a generic way. But I spent most of my consulting career arguing that it doesn't matter how much somebody's worth. So screening data that gives you information about what they're worth, their real estate, their SEC holdings, and so on and so on. But that kind of material, I just don't think it's very helpful. If you drive by their house and you can take a picture of it, or you know what kind of car they drive, that might be enough of a clue for most of our small to medium-sized organizations to work with. Having said that, I have found an organization that I like a lot called Donor Search. They're based in Maryland, and what they've done, in addition to wealth data, they've started to collect philanthropic data. In other words, they're collecting information on what kinds of organizations people give to, what kind of candidates people give to politically, and in what kind of denominations. All of this information is publicly available information, and most of it comes from annual reports and playbills and things like that. But frankly, I think that is worth it. I think that and there's iWave. There's a couple of these companies that are beginning to offer this information. I just think that it gives you, in terms of a compass direction, in terms of qualitative direction, what kinds of conversations do we need to have, could we have with a specific person, I think can be tremendously helpful. But every relationship is going to be unique, And it's just that information will just help you get started. It will help take a big list and make it into a small list, but it's not going to help you cultivate a specific person any more than picking up the phone and talking to them well.
Great, thank you. And I see that Sarah asked about repeating logistics of the Legacy Match campaign. I'm going to move on to other questions since the recording will be available for you to review later. And I just posted a link to the slides that are on David's website. So if you want to check out the resources on his website, including these slides, they are there. Betty asks, how about GoFundMe campaigns? Are they effective?
For every time I say no, they're not effective, there'll be one that blows me out of the water. So I think so much of that is personality driven. And if you have that kind of energy, and you have a social network that's in the thousands or tens of thousands, if you're a celebrity, and you can do sort of GoFundMe stuff on a video basis or something like that, then I think that it can be very effective. Beyond that, I haven't seen a lot of GoFundMe efforts raise more than several thousands of dollars on any kind of regular basis. And when I say several thousand, I mean like $2,000 or $3,000. $5,000 would be a big deal on a charity basis. Now, let me offer a couple of caveats. So what I'm doing is I'm comparing the energy that it takes to raise $2,000 or $3,000 that way versus the energy it takes to raise $2,000 or $3,000 from a single cultivation ask. And I think it's far easier, frankly, to do major gift program. So it's sort of like if you have a major gift program already up and running and you have a GoFundMe opportunity, then by all means go for it. But don't decide not to do major gift fundraising because you're going to do GoFundMe instead. The other caveat is that there's a bike race around Galveston Bay every year called Bike Around the Bay, I think. It's run by the Galveston Bay Foundation. And the racers themselves are all doing GoFundMe campaigns as a condition of their entry into the race. As an event-based fundraiser, I think that's very effective. It makes a huge difference that the organization itself is not involved in the GoFundMe stuff. It's all done by the energy around the GoFundMe stuff is run by the bikers themselves, by the racers themselves. So that's a huge thing already. But also just the number of people involved makes it a bigger fundraiser than it would be otherwise for Galveston Bay Foundation. If you want more information about that, I would certainly turn you on to the Galveston Bay Foundation. There's another land trust. They've got a lot on the ball. They've got a lot of stuff going on. They're a very interesting organization to learn from. And that might be something that you want to consider.
Great, thank you. We're getting some great questions coming in. So Sarah asks, can you speak to the reasonable expectations or considerations when thinking about budget needed for materials and events to support relationship development, with the caveat that she realizes this is really dependent on organizational size and other things?
Yeah, boy, that's tough. Look, it's also quite different in the virtual environment, right? So the last year, I was at the Rhode Island Summit, Land Conservation Summit in person, and it cost me $2,000 to go to from start to finish. It didn't cost me anything to get on a Zoom call today. So some of these expenses are going to be different in today's world than they were even a couple of years ago. Although I think that there'll be more materials. I do not think that materials need to be slick. One of the most effective materials that I've seen are 60-second videos that were taken with a cell phone on a tripod. It takes very little. It takes very little expense to produce a dozen of those and to have those available. There's an organization called Charity Water, and about 10 years ago they started doing thank yous on video and on a cell phone on a tripod, and then posting them on a YouTube channel that was the Thank You Charity Water channel, and then they'd send email links to people who had just made gifts. And I think that kind of thing is very, very inexpensive. I do think that the level of attention is commensurate with the giving. So Westerly Land Trust, for example, does an elaborate dinner, seafood, and it's prepared and served by volunteers and so on and so on. They did it virtually last year. That wasn't inexpensive to do, but the people who are giving at the level that they're giving to Westerly Land Trust, appreciated that level of attention being paid to them. So you're going to have to make decisions based upon your own organization, and you're going to have to make decisions based upon your own organizational culture. I will say this: I put a heavy premium on getting people out on the land. So if there's any way to bring your cultivation efforts and connect people with the actual land that they're helping to protect, which is harder with conservation easements than it is with fee ownership. I'd say do it, because major gifts are made by people who are connected emotionally to what they're giving to, and the land sells itself in that sense.
Excellent. So this question comes from David. So are there different steps or elements when you're establishing a major gift program for small distributed, so I think this means spatially distributed organizations where people and interests, kind of span across multiple states, where the opportunities to build relationships through in-person interactions are limited? And a related question, do you have experience with remote major gift programs, especially given COVID at this time?
Yeah, my experience is now 13 months old. It's just like everybody else. We're reinventing the wheel on sort of a daily basis. The emphasis that on that slide is the word personal. So I think that as we're reinventing things, as we're thinking about things in a different way, I think that if you whatever you can do to make it personal is going to be superior to making it any other way. Now, 15 months ago, I would have said, there's no substitute for being there in person, even if you're traveling to do that. I had a capital campaign that I was working on here in Wisconsin, and he said, I can't get this. My client said, I can't get this guy on the phone. He can't. I don't know when he's going to be around. And it's one of my lead donors. Do I advance other people? And I said, where does he live? And he said he lives in San Francisco. And I said, you just need to get on a plane and go to San Francisco and meet with him there. If he can't be here, then you need to go where he is and meet him there. And he did, and it resulted in $1 million gift. I'm telling that story because, and again, until 15 months ago, I would have said even remote and distributed offices and everything else, you need to be where the donors are. And if that means you got to travel, it means you got to travel. It's part of the job. And that means, going back to budget, that means you're going to have to budget travel money as well. Certainly trying to be efficient. The Crested Butte Land Trust in Colorado has a lot of donors in Texas and Oklahoma. And the executive director regularly makes trips to Texas and Oklahoma. But he's meeting with multiple donors whenever he travels. So there's a way to sort of make it efficient, more efficient than otherwise. But I do think that you need to be in the same space as donors are. And I think that that's going to be true after everyone's vaccinated. But again, we're reinventing the wheel as we go along here.
Great, thank you. There are a few more questions here, and I'm cognizant of time. This session is at 10:30, so if there, for some reason, we can't get to your questions, David's contact information is on that resources or on the website where I posted a link to the resources page, and I'm sure he'd be interested in chatting. This question comes from Richard. So, what are some good resources or ways to obtain other organizations' lists to gain access to new donors?
Well, the tried and true method that that environmental organizations have built their mailing list with, since the 1930s, probably 1950s, certainly. And I used to do this all the time at the Nature Conservancy. Is by trading. You put you give 1,000 names, and give 1,000 names, and you mail to each other's lists. Um, Nature Conservancy, Audubon Society, National Wildlife. These are all organizations that sell their lists, and you can. The cost is around $130 1,000 with a 5,000 minimum. So you're going to be in the $6,500 $7,000 range I'm sorry, $650 to $700 range to buy a list. But you can get a list of Nature Conservancy, Audubon Society members, and so on. That's a possibility. Different people have different levels of fortune buying and mailing to those lists. The only other thing, I haven't mailed recently to sort of what they call demographic lists or to psychographic profile lists. I think that most of the clients that I work with and most of the land trusts in the country, frankly, are too small to be able to really look at that. But that's also out there. Donor Search, Wealth Engine, iWave, and so on will sell you lists of people who give to environmental organizations, for example. That's another possibility. I also would maybe look at the neighborhood right around one of your popular preserves or one of your popular projects, and see if maybe a saturation mailing might work in that limited area, certainly with testing.
Great, excellent. Keith asks, so you mentioned phone calls throughout the presentation, but blind calls are really an anathema these days. How do you get around the aversion to blind calling?
Two things. First of all, I think that the anathema of phone calling has grown to mythological proportions. I think that if you really talk to people and really ask them what their preferences are, they're going to say, I hate robocalling. I hate sales calls. I hate robocalling. But I'll take a call every day from my mother. It's not the phone that's the problem. It's the caller. So that's why the relationship is so important. I think that you're going to, for a large portion of the time, you're going to call and you're going to get a voicemail. They're not going to recognize your number, or they're not going to want to talk to you if your phone says, so-and-so land trust and so on. That's why you leave a message and you say, I'm calling from the land trust. I noticed that you just made a gift. Thank you. I'm just calling to say thank you. If you have any questions, let me know and call me back. And I would leave your cell phone. I wouldn't leave the office phone. I'd leave your cell phone because you want them to call you back. Again, we're not talking about 250 people. We're talking about 5 or 10 or 30. We're not talking about a lot of people. So pick up the phone, leave a message, see if they call you back. The ones who call you back are automatically qualified. If that doesn't work, I would follow that up with an email first. And the subject line in the email is trying to reach you. And one of the questions that you're going to ask them in the email, one of the questions that you're going to ask them in a letter later on is, how would you like me to communicate with you? And if the person says text messaging, if the person says, don't do anything but phone calling, if the person says mail only or email only, then pay attention to that. I mean, part of this relationship building is to communicate with people in the manner and medium that they want to be communicated with. But I don't have any problem with using phone first.
Excellent, thank you. I think we have time for one more question, but before we do, I just want to say a reminder to please click on that link that Colleen just reposted. for the survey. We really, really value this feedback, and it's really helpful for the conference organizers. Feel free to go to David's website, developmentforconservation.com, and use that resource link that I have, or just search that in your browser. Yeah, and thank you all for being here. Oh yeah,
I do also have a blog that I post every Tuesday. If you're not familiar with it, it covers a whole range of fundraising topics and fundraising related topics, but I spend a lot of time every year focused on major gift fundraising. So if you're interested, check that out. There's a way to subscribe, doesn't cost you anything, and so on. So.
Fantastic. All right, I'll ask this last question before we end the session. Richard asks, is there a successful example of the real estate fund program that you had talked about in your presentation?
Yes, it's in Colorado. I believe it's the Colorado Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust. I can chase that down and sort of offline if you want more information. They've got a lot of information on their website of successful examples. But know that they are working with a lot more than just land trust organizations. They're not land trust specific by any stretch. So a lot of the examples that they have are other charities.